What if I told you that behind the laughter, behind the catchphrases, and behind the image of a happy TV family, there were secrets? Careers that never took off, battles with health, money, and identity, and choices that shocked even the most loyal fans. The Bernie Mac Show looked like lighthearted comedy on the surface. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find stories of triumph, tragedy, and scandal that never made it to primetime. This isn't just a trip down memory lane. This is the untold story of what really happened to the cast once the lights went out. Bernard Jeffrey McCullough. The world knew him simply as Bernie Mac. A Chicago native with a larger-than-life personality, Bernie didn't just step into the spotlight. He owned it. Before the Bernie Mac Show ever hit our TV screens, Bernie had already carved his name into comedy history as one of the original kings of comedy, standing shoulder to shoulder with Cedric the Entertainer, Steve Harvey, and D.L. Hewley. His stand-up style was raw, fearless, and unapologetically honest, the kind of comedy that made you laugh so hard you'd cry, even while he told the truth about life, family, and struggle. When the Bernie Mac Show premiered in 2001 on Fox, it wasn't just another sitcom. It was Bernie's world. His voice and his real-life perspective brought straight into America's living rooms. Loosely based on his own life, the series followed Bernie as a man suddenly raising his sister's 3 kids. He was the tough love guardian who wasn't afraid to look straight into the camera and tell America, "I ain't scared of you." He'd throw out those playful threats to keep the kids in line. But under all that bravado was a man whose heart was as big as his humor, and audiences loved him for it. Over its 5-season run, the show won a Peabody Award, an Emmy, and Bernie himself took home NAACP Image Awards for his role. But Bernie's talents went far beyond the sitcom stage. In the 2000s, he built an impressive film career, stealing scenes in blockbuster hits. He joined the star-studded cast of Ocean's 11, 12, and 13, where his comedic timing stood out even among Hollywood heavyweights like George Clooney and Brad Pitt. He brought his unique charm to Bad Santa, voiced Zuba the Lion in Madagascar, and even joined the Transformers universe as the hustling used car salesman who kicked off Sam Witwicky's adventure. Every role he took on, whether big or small, carried that unmistakable Bernie Mac energy. Sadly, Bernie's time was cut short. In August 2008, just 2 years after the Bernie Mac Show wrapped, he passed away due to complications from sarcoidosis, an inflammatory disease he had battled for years. He was only 50 years old. The loss sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. Friends, fans, and fellow comedians mourned not just a performer, but a man who had changed the way people saw comedy and themselves. Even in his absence, Bernie's legacy has continued to grow. He was celebrated in Prime Video's docuseries Fat Tuesdays, the era of hip-hop comedy, a tribute to the groundbreaking black comedians who paved the way for future generations. His daughter, Janice McCullough, has spoken candidly about life as Bernie's child, admitting she didn't always love being part of his material, but also sharing that, deep down, she always knew her father's biggest priority was family. Bernie Mac was more than a comedian. He was a truth teller, a storyteller. A man who could make you laugh until you couldn't breathe, then leave you thinking about what he said long after the punchline. His voice, his style, and his honesty were one of a kind. And while he may be gone, the laughter he gave us will echo for generations. In the Bernie Mac Show, Bernie may have been the loud, swagger-filled, my way or the highway ruler of the house, but even a king needs a queen to keep him from starting a full-blown civil war in the living room. Enter Wanda McCullough, played by Kalita Smith, the glue, the balance, the calm in Bernie's comedic storm. She was patient, compassionate, and graceful. But let's be real. She deserved a medal just for putting up with Bernie and suddenly inheriting 3 kids overnight. I mean, imagine going from no kids to becoming an instant mom to 3. 1 teenager with an attitude, 1 smart-aleck middle child, and 1 adorable but sneaky youngest sibling. And on top of that, your husband is prone to yelling America mid-lecture like he's addressing the entire country instead of his own living room. Poor Wanda. She had patience, but even saints have their limits. And when the kids or Bernie pushed too far, she'd flash that look, and everyone knew it was game over. Her role wasn't just comic relief, she was the emotional heartbeat of the show. Wanda brought empathy to balance Bernie's tough love approach, making the McCullough household feel like a real family, messy, loud, but full of love. After the show wrapped in 2006, Kalita Smith proved she was far more than the sitcom wife. She stepped into the First family, playing First Lady Katherine Johnson, swapping out parenting squabbles for White House drama, and doing it with style. It was still comedy, but with a sharper, more polished edge. Then came one of the wildest turns in her career, Z Nation. Gone were the suburban kitchens and PTA meetings. Instead, she was leading survivors through a zombie apocalypse as Lieutenant Roberta Warren. And she wasn't just surviving. She was bossing the apocalypse like it was her 9-to-5. She told Blavity she had been looking for a role that showcased a strong, groundbreaking heroine, and she got it. It was a far cry from telling Bernie to calm down. Now she was telling armed strangers and undead hordes to back off. And somehow she made both look equally believable. But here's the thing. Whether she's holding a chaotic family together or keeping humanity alive after the end of the world, Kalita has that same core energy, strength, leadership, and the ability to keep people in line without losing her cool. Still, a part of me feels for Wanda. Imagine going from raising 3 kids and Bernie to dealing with zombies. This woman has never caught a break. Someone give Aunt Wanda a vacation already. No matter what role she takes, though, for fans of the Bernie Mac Show, she'll always be Aunt Wanda, the calm, stylish, and endlessly patient queen who kept Bernie from completely losing his mind, most of the time. When the Bernie Mac Show premiered in 2001, the oldest of the Mac children was Vanessa Nessa Tompkins, played by Camille Winbush. She was just 11 years old at the time, but already, Camille was no stranger to the screen. Born in Culver City, California, on February 9, 1990, the only child of Anthony and Alice Winbush, she had been acting since she was a little girl. Before she ever rolled her eyes at Bernie on primetime TV, she had appeared in Minor Adjustments and Hanging with Mr. Cooper. That early start set her up for what would become her most memorable role. On the Bernie Mac Show, Vanessa was the ultimate test of Bernie's patience. The oldest child, the one most likely to slam a door or challenge his authority, she was rebellious, sharp-tongued, and never afraid to say what was on her mind. But under all that teenage sass was a girl who carried the weight of her siblings on her shoulders. Audiences could see it. She wasn't just giving Bernie a headache for fun. She wanted her brother and sister to have a better childhood than she did. That sense of protectiveness, mixed with her occasional defiance, made Vanessa one of the most relatable characters on the show. After the Bernie Mac Show ended, Camille didn't fade into obscurity right away. She kept working, picking up guest roles on Criminal Minds, Grey's Anatomy, and other TV staples. Her biggest follow-up was her role as Lauren in The Secret Life of the American Teenager, where she appeared across all 5 seasons. It was a high-profile gig that gave her another shot at growing up on screen, this time in the midst of messy teen drama. There were also film appearances sprinkled in, but none carried the same cultural weight as her time with Bernie Mac. But then, reality hit. Like so many child stars, Winbush had to face the hard truth. Fame doesn't always last, and the industry doesn't always take care of its own. In 2024, she revealed in an interview with Hype Plus that the residual checks from the Bernie Mac Show, a show that millions still watch in reruns, aren't enough to sustain her. 20 years later, those checks are not sustainable for a living, she admitted. That's when she explained that she'd worked countless normal jobs since the sitcom ended, from teaching gymnastics to running her own ice cream shop. And then came the decision that sparked headlines. Camille Winbush launched an OnlyFans. For some, it was shocking. For others, it was just another example of how unpredictable Hollywood can be. She faced backlash, of course, but her reasoning was painfully honest. Sometimes life gets hard, bills pile up, and you do what you need to do to survive. And truthfully, who can blame her? When the industry turns its back, when the spotlight moves on, you either sink or you find a way to adapt. Now 35 years old, Camille sits in a strange place in her career. Some would say she's already washed up, that her best years are behind her. Others see her as a survivor, someone who has navigated the highs of Hollywood stardom and the lows of real-life struggle. And in that contrast, between a child star's glory and an adult's reality, there's something haunting, almost tragic, but also deeply human. So what do you think? Is Camille Winbush a story of wasted potential, or is she proof that no matter how the industry treats you, there's life beyond the screen? Jordan Tompkins, played by Jeremy Suarez, was the ultimate geeky yet lovable middle child on the Bernie Mac show. He was book smart, gifted in school, sharp with facts, but had a lot of growing up to do emotionally. Over the course of the series, we watched him go from the anxious, germ-fearing nephew who could turn a paper cut into a full-blown crisis to a more confident teenager, starting to find his place in the world. Bernie's tough love and sarcastic lectures may have been intense, but Jordan's wide-eyed innocence and awkward charm made him one of the show's most memorable characters. Before landing the role, Jeremy had already made a name for himself in Hollywood, with parts in Jerry Maguire, voicing Coda in Disney's Brother Bear, and even appearing in Treasure Planet. He was on a roll. After the show wrapped in 2006, things slowed down. He did some voiceover work for King of the Hill, starred in Extreme Movie and Angry Video Game Nerd the Movie, but the steady acting jobs didn't last. Hollywood, especially for young actors transitioning into adulthood, can be unforgiving. In a 2023 interview with Hype Plus, Jeremy revealed that he eventually stepped away from Hollywood altogether, taking on regular jobs and living a more everyday lifestyle. He described it as a fact-finding mission, going out into the world, experiencing life, and making those experiences part of who he is. It's a healthy outlook, but it also came with challenges. Work and entertainment became harder to come by, money was tight, and at one point, he even faced homelessness. These days, he's 33, married, and still gets royalty checks from the Bernie Mac show. But as he said himself, those checks aren't nearly the fortune people imagine. Jeremy's talked about wanting to return to acting, but after so long out of the spotlight, a comeback won't be easy. Still, there's hope. Maybe the upcoming King of the Hill revival could give him a shot to step back into voice work. Because if anyone deserves a second act, it's the kid who made us laugh just by panicking over a loose shoelace. Here's to hoping Hollywood remembers what we already know. Jeremy Suarez is worth rooting for. Baby Girl, real name Brianna Tompkins, played by Dee Davis. What can I say about Bernie's favorite? From the moment she stepped on screen in the Bernie Mac show, she had the audience wrapped around her little finger. She was just 5 years old when the series began, and she instantly became the heart of the show. Her big eyes, soft voice, and innocent one-liners were enough to melt Bernie's tough exterior every single time. No matter how much Bernie tried to play the big, scary uncle, when it came to Baby Girl, he was putty in her hands. She could get away with almost anything, and watching Bernie cave every time was half the fun. Her character brought balance to the show. Jordan was the overthinking germaphobe, Vanessa was the rebellious teen, but Baby Girl was the pure, wholesome center. Whether she was asking Bernie an adorably deep question about life or tugging at his sleeve with a pout, you couldn't help but smile. She was the little sister every family sitcom dreams of having. Fast forward to today, and wow, has she grown. Dee Davis is now 28 years old, a married woman and a proud mom of 2 beautiful kids who look exactly like her when she was on the show. It's almost eerie how much her daughter in particular is her little mini-me. Same cheeks, same smile, same sparkle in the eyes. It's like Baby Girl 2.0 is already here. But life after the Bernie Mac show wasn't all smooth sailing. Just like Jeremy Suarez, Dee struggled to find stable acting work after the series ended. Hollywood can be brutal, especially for child stars, and roles didn't come knocking the way people might think. Bills still have to be paid, and sometimes when life pushes you to the limit, you do whatever it takes to survive. For Dee, that meant venturing into OnlyFans, something that surprised many, but at the same time, you can't really blame her. She's an adult now, making choices to support her family, and that's what matters most. No matter what, I still remember that innocent, lovable baby girl, the one who could melt Bernie Mac's heart with just a hug. She'll always hold that spot in fans' memories, and seeing her now, building her own life and raising her kids, is both surreal and heartwarming. Oh, and here's a fun little side note. Dee older sister, Ari Davis, is also an actress. You might remember her from Everybody Hates Chris and The Haunted Mansion. If anyone watching actually remembers her or has a favorite role of hers, drop it in the comments. I'd love to see how many people were paying attention back then. Next, we turn to Naya Rivera, a talent whose story is as remarkable as it is tragic. She was just 15 years old when she first appeared on The Bernie Mac Show playing Donna, one of Vanessa's friends. It was a small role, but even then, you could see she had that rare presence. The kind of presence that made you stop and notice. The kind that told you this young actress was on the path to something bigger. Naya's journey in Hollywood began much earlier than Bernie Mac. She had been acting since childhood, appearing in commercials and guest spots, always chasing a dream. But it was in 2009, with the role of Santana Lopez on Glee, that she truly broke through. At first, Santana seemed like the archetypal mean girl cheerleader. Yet under Naya's skill, that character transformed. She gave Santana wit, strength, and vulnerability, and as the story unfolded, Santana embraced her sexuality and became one of the most authentic portrayals of a young queer woman on television at the time. For countless fans, Naya Rivera didn't just play a role. She gave them representation, hope, and someone they could finally see themselves in. Her talent was undeniable, her performances magnetic. And yet, life can be unbearably cruel. In July 2020, tragedy struck. Naya went missing while out boating with her 4-year-old son on Lake Piru, California. Days later, her body was recovered, the news confirming what fans had feared. She had drowned while saving her son's life. She was only 33 years old. The entertainment world grieved, but the pain for her family, her little boy, and those closest to her was immeasurable. Her story didn't end there. Even after her passing, tributes continued to honor her legacy. Her ex-husband, Ryan Dorsey, shared a heartbreaking message this year on what would have been her 38th birthday. 5 birthdays since you've been gone. Thoughts every day about how it went wrong. Words that echo the sadness of a life cut short and the enduring void she left behind. Naya Rivera's final role came as the voice of Catwoman in Batman: The Long Halloween. But for so many, she will always be remembered as Santana, the character who changed the landscape of TV, and as Donna, the young girl who once laughed alongside Vanessa on The Bernie Mac Show. Her life was brief, but her impact was profound. Naya Rivera's story is one of brilliance, beauty, and unimaginable loss, a reminder of both the heights talent can reach and the fragility of the human journey. Next, we arrive at Anthony Anderson, who joined The Bernie Mac Show in its final season, taking on the role of Brianna's father, better known to fans as Baby Girl's dad. At the time, Anderson was just 35 years old, already a familiar presence in Hollywood, but his arrival on the series added a fresh dynamic to the story. Brianna, the sweet, youngest member of the family, suddenly had her father re-enter her life, and Anderson played Brian with that unique blend of warmth, humor, and complexity that only he could deliver. Anderson's career stretched far beyond this single role. Not long after, he joined the cast of Law & Order for its 18th season, an era many fans still hail as one of the strongest in the show's history. And while Law & Order left the air in 2010, Anderson would return more than a decade later, reprising his role when the series was revived in 2022. But perhaps his most defining role came as Andre Dre Johnson in Black-ish. Across 8 seasons, Anderson transformed Dre into a cultural touchstone, a character who was both funny and flawed, thoughtful yet stubborn, and always relatable in his quest to balance family, career, and identity. Yet behind the curtain, Anderson has faced personal battles, particularly with his long struggle against type 2 diabetes. It's a disease he has been open about, sharing how it's forced him to change his lifestyle and confront difficult truths about his health. There's a heaviness to that part of his journey. Managing a chronic illness while maintaining the demanding pace of Hollywood is no small feat. At times, it's cost him physically and emotionally, but his resilience in the face of those challenges is undeniable. Now at 55 years old, Anthony Anderson remains a powerhouse in television, a man whose body of work has spanned comedy, drama, and everything in between. And while fans will always remember him for Black-ish or Law & Order, there's something quietly significant about his brief time as Brianna's dad on The Bernie Mac Show. It was a role that reminded us that even baby girl, Bernie's heart and soul, had her own story to tell, and Anderson brought that story to life with authenticity. Anthony Anderson's path is a mix of triumph and trial. He's made us laugh, he's made us think, and he's carried personal battles with courage. His story, like so many connected to The Bernie Mac Show, is one that lingers long after the credits roll. And then we have Reginald Ballard, a face so many of us instantly recognize even if the name doesn't ring right away. Most people first met him in the 90s as the unforgettable bruh man from The Fifth Flow on Martin. That role alone made him a comedy legend, with his slow delivery and deadpan humor that fans still quote to this day. But in 2001, Ballard found a new home on The Bernie Mac Show, stepping in as WB, one of Bernie's closest friends. He was part of Bernie's inner circle, the guys you'd always see around the poker table or chilling in the background, bringing those down-to-earth laughs that balanced out Bernie's larger-than-life personality. Ballard was in his mid-30s when he joined the show, and his presence added something real, like you could actually imagine hanging out with him in your own living room. After the show ended, Ballard kept busy with small but steady roles in series like Just Jordan, Weeds, and Rizzoli Isles. And most recently, he's been using his voice in a new way, becoming a recurring guest on the 2023 podcast Rich People's Business. It's proof he's still out there creating, even if he's been keeping a much lower profile. But his journey hasn't been easy. In the early 2020s, Reginald faced a serious health scare when he was diagnosed with kidney disease. He spent 8 long months on dialysis, a grueling process that can take such a heavy toll on the body. In an incredible act of love and sacrifice, his wife, Edith, entered into a paired donation program, giving one of her kidneys so that Reginald could receive a transplant that was the best possible match. That decision not only saved his life, but also showed just how much strength and courage he and his family carry. Today, at 66 years old, Reginald Ballard is still standing, still pushing forward. It's hard not to feel a little emotional when you think about everything he's been through, the laughter he's given us, the characters that became household favorites, and the battles he's fought off-screen. For fans of Martin and The Bernie Mac Show, Reginald isn't just a side character. He's part of the family. Do you want me to make this flow directly after the Bernie Mac section in your cast video so it feels like one smooth continuation? Every great sitcom has that one character who feels like family, even if they technically aren't. On The Bernie Mac Show, that role often belonged to Kelly, played by Michael Ralph. He wasn't just some background player. Kelly was Bernie's friend, the guy who showed up at the Mac household during one of life's rough patches. After getting dumped by his girlfriend, he moved in with Bernie, which, as you can imagine, turned the Mac home into a whole new kind of circus. At first, it was chaos. Bernie was used to being the center of authority, the man of the house who set the rules. But Kelly, without even trying, started winning people over. The kids warmed up to him, especially when he began helping out around the house and stepping into the kind of fun uncle role that Bernie was far too strict to ever pull off. Suddenly, the children had someone who wasn't just enforcing bedtime, but laughing with them, guiding them in a more playful, easygoing way. And that's where things got complicated. Bernie started noticing that the kids weren't just listening to Kelly, they were looking up to him. Almost like he was becoming a permanent role model. Almost like maybe he was sliding into a role Bernie himself was supposed to fill. That tension made for some of the show's funniest, but also most telling moments. The push and pull between authority and affection, between Bernie's pride and his fear of being replaced. But let's talk about the man behind Kelly, Michael Ralph. Now, here's where it gets interesting. There's a good chance if his name doesn't immediately ring a bell, you're at least familiar with his sister, Cheryl Lee Ralph. She's a Broadway legend, an Emmy winner, and currently a fan favorite on Abbott Elementary, proving the Ralph family talent runs deep. While Cheryl made headlines for decades of groundbreaking performances, Michael carved out a different path, one that's just as impressive, but often quieter. Before The Bernie Mac Show, Michael Ralph had already been a fixture on television. On A Different World, he became a sort of shapeshifter, portraying multiple characters across episodes, reportedly as many as 10 different roles. That flexibility is the hallmark of a strong character actor, someone you might not instantly recognize but who leaves an impact every time. After his time as Kelly Rapt, Ralph's career shifted toward the world of voiceover acting. And if you've ever underestimated voice actors, you shouldn't. Because chances are, you've heard Ralph without even realizing it. His voice has snuck into countless projects. He popped up in Drake and Josh Go Hollywood. He's lent his voice to X-Men 97, Skeleton Crew, and is even credited for a few episodes of Arcane. That's an impressive resume that quietly cements him as one of those voices that helps bring worlds to life, whether animated, action-packed, or somewhere in between. Today, Michael Ralph is 62 years old, and while he might not be in the spotlight in the same way his sister is, he's carved out a career built on consistency, adaptability, and undeniable talent. Kelly might have just been Bernie's friend on the show, but for viewers, he was proof that sometimes the guest in the household leaves just as lasting a mark as the family itself. And as for Michael Ralph, his legacy isn't just what you've seen on screen, it's what you've heard, often without even knowing it. Another face that might surprise longtime fans of The Bernie Mac Show was Niecy Nash, who appeared in a recurring guest role as Bernie's sister, Benita. Every time she showed up, drama seemed to follow. She was the kind of sister who thought she knew best, constantly offering Bernie unsolicited, and usually terrible, advice, stirring the pot at family gatherings, and in one memorable arc, dressing in a way that left poor young Jordan completely smitten. And yes, that's as awkward as it sounds. But while her role as Benita added sparks of chaos to the Mac household, The Bernie Mac Show isn't what most fans associate Niecy Nash with. Around the same time, she was making television history with her breakout performance on Reno 911 as the bold, hilarious Deputy Rainisha Williams. That role not only turned her into a household name, it gave her the momentum to evolve into one of Hollywood's most versatile performers. Over the years, she's bounced between comedy and drama with ease, racking up acclaimed roles in shows like Getting On, Claws, and even winning an Emmy for her work in Dahmer, Monster, The Jeffrey Dahmer Story. Of course, with fame often comes controversy. While Niecy has carved out a career of resilience and reinvention, she hasn't been immune to whispers. It's been alleged in certain corners of Hollywood gossip that behind the scenes she could be difficult to work with, clashing with directors and co-stars on more than one project. Some say her larger-than-life personality spilled over when the cameras stopped rolling, creating tension that few dared to talk about openly. Alleged or not, it adds another layer to the complex picture of an actress who has never shied away from owning the spotlight. Now at 55 years old, Niecy Nash remains a force, both celebrated and sometimes polarizing. She's proof that an actor can step into a show like The Bernie Mac Show for just a handful of episodes and still leave a lasting impression, her Benita character living on as one of Bernie's most unforgettable family foils. Whether it was causing Jordan's embarrassing crush, sparking friction with Bernie, or strutting in with enough confidence to command every scene, Niecy Nash knew exactly how to make her presence felt. If Jordan and Brianna weren't stirring up chaos at home, odds are they were doing it at Damien Elementary, where they often crossed paths with the school's no-nonsense dean, Father Sean Cronin, portrayed by Wade Williams. Now, Father Cronin was supposed to be the moral compass of the school, a man of the cloth, guiding children toward discipline and faith. But let's be honest, the man smoked, cursed, and carried himself with the kind of intimidation you'd expect more from a mob boss than a priest. It was this contradiction that made the character so compelling, and Wade Williams leaned into it with the mix of menace and weary authority that stuck in the minds of fans. Williams himself has always been something of a chameleon in Hollywood, a classic character actor whose face you recognize even if the name sometimes slips by. Since the 1990s, he's popped up everywhere. Walker, Texas Ranger, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The X-Files, and even a quick turn in Charmed. He built a career on playing authority figures with an edge, the kind of people you wouldn't want to cross in a dark alley, but also couldn't help but watch. Right around the time The Bernie Mac Show was wrapping up, Williams found his career-defining role on Fox's Prison Break, playing Captain Brad Bellick, the prison guard everyone loved to hate. Bellick was cruel, petty, and corrupt, but in true Wade Williams fashion, he layered the performance so deeply that over time, you couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for the guy. His run on Prison Break solidified him as one of television's go-to actors for complex villains and morally gray authority figures. After that, Williams kept his momentum going, building an impressive resume across television and film. He's turned up in everything from The Dark Knight Rises to Westworld and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. His most recent big-screen work came in The Last Manhunt, where he shared the cast with Jason Momoa and Lily Gladstone, proving he still had the chops to keep up with Hollywood heavyweights. But in the last few years, things have gone quiet for Wade Williams. No big headlines, no new projects buzzing around the trades. And in a way, that silence almost feels intentional. After decades of hustling from role to role, maybe he's just stepping back, catching his breath, and letting the legacy of his characters do the talking. Because make no mistake, whether it's the corrupt guard on Prison Break, the menacing Dean on The Bernie Mac Show, or countless other "hey, I know that guy" appearances, Wade Williams has already cemented himself as one of those unforgettable faces in television history. And perhaps that's the irony of Father Cronin. A man who was supposed to embody virtue, but instead left a trail of smoke and four-letter words in the school hallways. Played by an actor who's made a career out of giving flawed authority figures a strangely human touch. In the end, it's what makes Williams and Father Cronin so memorable. And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the Bernie Mac Show cast, where the laughs met the struggles and fame came with a price no one could predict. From rising stars to familiar faces, each story reminds us that behind every sitcom smile, there's a real person with real challenges. If you enjoyed uncovering these untold stories, hit that like button, subscribe for more Then and Now journeys, and drop a comment telling us which cast member's story surprised you the most.